Hello and welcome. My name is Dr. Jeff Langmaid with the Evidence Based Chiropractor, and you have joined me for Marketing Chiropractic with Social Media. Over the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to go through everything you need to know to simplify down your marketing and really get better results. How are we going to do that? By diving into the major platforms you need to be on and giving you the action steps needed to get results. The other aspects we're going to look at are a patient journey. How can you set up your messaging to make it easy for a patient to say yes when they're ready for your care? So over the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to go through all of that and more. And I can promise you, if you take some of what you learn in this presentation and start implementing, you're going to see results in your practice, which is what I am most excited about. So without further ado, let's dive in. As I said at the top, my name is Dr. Jeff Langmaid, and this is a little bit of background and history. I think it's important to understand where I'm coming from and why I'm giving this advice so you can understand how you should implement it and ultimately how you can get those good results. So I am founder of the Evidence Based Chiropractor and Chiro Office Coverage. The Evidence Based Chiropractor, if you're watching this, you probably have seen some of the content that we've put out over the last 5 to 8 years. There's probably nobody on planet Earth that's produced more pro chiropractic content than the Evidence Based Chiropractor. So I firsthand understand the importance of getting out there on the line. Additionally, I'm involved with the Smart Chiropractor, which is social media for chiropractors, AOMZ Diagnostics, which is a spinal diagnostic imaging company, and then things get really interesting. A lot of what I've taken and brought back into chiropractic was learned outside of chiropractic. I was fortunate to practice at quite a few multidisciplinary groups that were focused on orthopedics and in the surgical realm. These are companies that were spending hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars each and every month marketing their practices. Now, while you and I probably cannot afford those numbers in terms of sheer ad spend, what we can do is get a good understanding of the tenets that these major healthcare organizations are utilizing to market their practice, and then make it applicable to what we do every day as chiropractors. That's what this presentation is about. That's why I'm so excited that you are here. So what does all that experience mean? What does that mean for you? Why is it important? Well, it means that I have been sitting in the seat that you are currently in. That is correct. I came out as a new doc, not understanding anything about social media. You can see up on your screen right now, that is a still image when I had much less facial hair and much more hair on top of my head, and that was the first time I was ever on television. You can search that out if you want, but I would not recommend it if you want to get inspired. It is horrible. I had no idea what I was doing. I wasn't trained. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know the message I was trying to give. And that's the way many docs are today. Understanding the different social media platforms, understanding how to utilize video to get your message out there is historically super challenging for a lot of chiropractors, and I can understand where you are coming from, undoubtedly. But over time, I started to learn. Spending time out on the West Coast in Silicon Valley, traveling out to Chicago, New York, etc., to really go to big marketing conferences to understand what are other people doing, what are other technology-driven companies doing to get their message out there, how are they acquiring users, as they would say, patients as we would understand, and then what are the tricks that they're utilizing? What are the strategies? What are the tactics? And how are they going about doing this in a cost-effective fashion? As I said just a couple of moments ago, the other aspect of that was practicing within some of these large multidisciplinary groups and seeing the other side of the equation while growing the evidence-based chiropractor. There was a lot of trial and tribulation. There were many posts that did not reach more than 3 or 4 people. But understanding where that mattered and where strategy needed to change and where perseverance came into play is very, very, very important. So my big question to you as we get started would be, is this the type of content that you are consistently posting on social media? If so, I'm going to encourage you to change. That is not to say you cannot have fun on social media, but utilizing social media, spending time on Facebook, spending time in Facebook groups, commenting on other people's Instagram posts. Always keep in mind, as an overarching theme, be positive with that content. Don't be a troll online is the bottom line. And having enough time to post relevant content is challenging enough. So I would encourage you, don't post wacky stuff online, or else you will end up as Keanu Reeves does right now on this bench, as sad Keanu. There's a better way to go about it, and there is a clearly better way to utilize these 5 major platforms. LinkedIn is one of them. Podcasting is another. Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Don't forget about Google and your website. Those are the platforms and the technologies that we're gonna dive into, talk about the action steps, and make sure that you are set up for success as you move forward with your chiropractic practice. So why does all of this matter? Well, let's take a look at it by the numbers. As you can see here on the screen are all of the major platforms, right? We have Facebook, YouTube, Google, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and finally podcasting. And yes, at the top of that is 2 billion people. Who ranks up there? Facebook. Facebook has nearly 2 billion active users at this point in time. So yes, your ideal client, your non-ideal client, everybody in between is on Facebook. Where are we at with YouTube? YouTube, almost 1.5 billion users. And let's go to Google. This gets interesting. Google, yes, Google has less. There are more active users, more searches on YouTube currently than Google. Important to keep in mind as we talk about video. Where does Instagram fall into play? Instagram's right around 1 billion. So there's a ton of people, and one of the fastest growing demographics on Instagram are moms, for lack of a better way to say it. Women between the ages of, let's say, 25 to 44 that are relatively active, higher earning income. Those are the fastest growing demographic on Instagram, so it's a great place to be as a chiropractor. LinkedIn, we're looking at nearly 500, little over 500 million active users. That's a lot of people. Twitter, a little bit less than that. And podcasts, while coming in last on this graphic, with podcasts, it's important to keep in mind that if somebody subscribes to your podcast, they want to go deep with you. These people are committed. So don't sleep on podcasts, even though it's the lowest number of people. I'm gonna argue that they are the most engaged portion of people. But these numbers showcase, or should showcase to you, why it is so important to be present across these channels and more. So if you wanna lift yourself up, lift someone else up. This is a Booker Washington quote, and I think this is a great framework to think about your online message. Are you lifting people up? Are you inspiring people? Are you inspiring people to take action? Are you inspiring people to live a healthier life? Are you inspiring people to get back to their activities? These are all different ways to frame the same thing. But when you start talking about how you can benefit other people, how your practice, your techniques, your experience can make their life experience better, that is what resonates with individuals far more than anything else. So how does that translate? Well, to me, that translates to the statement of it is all about your audience. And when I say audience, sometimes that sounds a little tech. What does that mean? Audience means whoever's seeing you online. That could be people in your community. It could be friends, family, colleagues, people who happen to follow your page. These are the people within your audience. Who is following you online? Who's coming across your material online, even if they're not following you yet? That's the audience that you want to keep in mind. And the best framework that I have come around yet to showcase how you can speak to these individuals, how you can speak to your audience, and how you can motivate people actually comes from Donald Miller at StoryBrand. So full credit, this is all about StoryBrand. If you want to check that out, you can head over to storybrand.com. But I think he breaks it down in a very, very clear and meaningful way that all of us can take action on. So as you can see here, this is basically the patient journey. It's the hero's journey, as he would say. And what does that mean? Well, step number 1 is identifying who's the character in your story. I'll give you a big hint. The character is the patient. It is the prospective patient. You are not the character or the hero. The hero of the journey has to be the other person, and there cannot be 2 heroes. We'll get to your role in just a moment, but keep in mind the main character of all of your marketing, the storytelling that you do in and around your practice, needs to be around the prospective patient and when are they gonna come in. Next, we're going to talk about the problem that they have, right? If you couldn't benefit them, if they didn't have a problem that you could solve, there'd be nothing for you to do, right? So there's some problem that they're experiencing that you can solve. So identify that. Is it an internal problem? Is it an external problem? Is it a psychological problem? Is it esoteric, so to speak? These are important. Is it just pain? Is it lifestyle that they're looking for improvement, right? Internal, external. Keep in mind, what is the problem? Identify those problems. We'll talk about that more in just a few moments. Next, you want to showcase your empathy and your authority, right? You understand where they're coming from, and you are going to be starting to position yourself as their guide. You are the guide in the journey. That patient is the hero. They are the person going through things, but they've encountered a problem, as we talked about. So it's important for you to say, hey, I'm the guide. I understand where you're coming from, and here is a plan of action. That's the next step, right? You're going to identify as the guide. I understand where you're coming from. I've experienced this or seen this before. Here's the plan of action that we can take to overcome the problem that you are challenged with. So call out that plan of action is super, super important. And as you kind of get towards the close there, you want to identify what happens if they take that plan of action and what happens if they do not take that plan of action. Identifying both of those things is very important. Now, like salt, the downside, if they don't take that plan, you want to use sparingly, right? You don't need to get overly dramatic with things. But certainly touching on the fact of what they may experience if they don't have that plan of action is important from a psychological perspective. It is important, really, from helping your patients, your prospects, your audience understand the true benefits of what you can offer in your practice. So I think it's important to touch on all of those, and really, the key word you want to think about as we look through this whole journey is transformation. You are the guide to help transform somebody from what they are today to what they could be tomorrow. If they identify you as their guide, if they take the plan of action that you've set forth, and if you go through it together, that transformation can be theirs. And when I say all of that, I don't want you to think about that as snake oil, or as that it should be cheesy or sleazy or underhanded. This is real. Break it down to exactly what works for you, exactly what works for your patients. But keep in mind, aspects of this journey should be in every piece of marketing that you get out. Not every single thing is going to have every single piece in the whole story, but each piece of content that you put out, every post, every video, every blog should relate or relay to some aspect of this journey. The more effectively you do that, the more clarity there will be for your patients and your audience, which makes it easier for them to make a decision if and when you are the right chiropractor for them. So when we dive into that, the bottom line is what's your audience interests, goals, and pain points? And pain points potentially most importantly, right? We talked about it's all about your audience. So what are those pain points? I would challenge you, take a picture of this slide, write it down on the side, but identify some of those pain points. What are the problems that the people in your audience, in your community, your ideal patient, what are some of the biggest problems that they're dealing with? Identify those very, very clearly. So for instance, I used this example a few months ago, and I think it's just as relevant as ever. If you talked about somebody with shoulder pain, right? I'm gonna take it out of the spine for this example. Somebody with shoulder pain. That's a lot of people. There's a lot of specialists competing for that. Is that me? Is that not me? I don't know. But if you identify it as, I want to speak to you as a 15-year-old athlete that might have a college scholarship on the line who wants to get back out there and perform your best in the state championship. That is a very, very niche person, right? But the more that you can do that and identify those individuals and their specific pain points, the more real every piece of content, all of your messaging, the more real it can become. So identify those pain points. Is it a CrossFit athlete who might have a young family, who really enjoys CrossFit as a way to blow off steam, as a way to stay healthy, and as a way to meet people? They want to stay in the gym. They don't want to be injured. Dive deep into these things. Identify those pain points. Use this as a starting point for it. So, as we start to develop those pain points, you might be saying, okay, I'm starting to get there. I understand where you're going, the messaging, and we're going to start breaking down the platforms. So what is the single most cost-effective and impactful way to communicate? That would be my question to you. I'll give you 3 seconds. And the answer is video. It's what nobody wants to hear is the answer, but it is the truth. Video is by far the most impactful way to communicate your message to your audience. Utilizing video has far-reaching benefits. We're going to dive into all of them. But first, I want to break down some key factors that you can utilize to start getting going with video if you haven't yet. but also to refine your process if you've already started to do it. So video is paramount. Important thing to keep in mind, what I call the 5 commandments of video. Everybody thinks they look weird. Everybody thinks they sound weird. Everybody thinks they do not have the right gear. Nobody knows what they should talk about. And everybody wants more than one view. These are universal truths in video. You probably can identify with 1 or probably 5 of them, as I did when I got started. They are universal truths. So what does that mean? It means that all of us need to get over it. The quicker you get started, the quicker you start getting those reps in, just as with anything in life, the better you will develop the skill, the better you'll develop the technique, and the more rapidly you will improve the product. So the 5 commandments of video, they're real, but you just gotta get over it and get started. And let's talk about a few ways that you can make that a heck of a lot easier on yourself starting right now. Keys to creating awesome video, there are 2 things to keep in mind, a whopping 2 things. Sound and lighting. Sound is absolutely imperative, the audio, right? You wanna make sure that you have crystal clear audio. Actually, more than video. People will click off something even on a video, if the sound isn't right, people will click to the next thing 10 times to 1. People will deal with a little bit less quality on the video side, but audio has to be sharp and clear. How do you do that? 2 things to keep in mind. Have a quiet space as best you can. Not everybody has the perfect space in the sound booth to record, but try to keep the background noise to a minimum. That just helps you be more present in the microphone. And speak loud enough. Don't start. You gotta speak up, speak loud, be proud, get your message out there. So make sure that your audio source is picking things up. And what would that audio source be? It would be a microphone, right? There is a shotgun mic and a lavalier microphone. These are 2 examples that you can pick up. I've actually owned things similar to both of these, and they're both not terribly expensive, right? The Rode microphone that you see, the red and black microphone, that's more if you have a DSLR, if you have a Canon or a Nikon camera or something like that you're filming with. It's a great microphone to plug in and pop on the top. It slides right on the top of most cameras. It gives you, it's called a shotgun microphone, so it really picks up audio right in front. So it's great if you're doing kind of vlog or selfie style things, perfect microphone to use. If you're moving around a lot more or you're filming everything on your phone, you can pick up one of those lavalier microphones. They're 12, 15, 20 bucks. You can get a great microphone, clips right on. I'm actually using one right here even though it's wireless. And it gives you the ability to have a great direct audio source, which is absolutely crucial. So you can check out either of those on Amazon at your own leisure. Second portion of video that we were talking about was lighting, right? This is 2-point lighting made simple, as you can see here. So 2-point lighting, what does that mean? It means that there's 2 lights. So there's you standing right in front of the camera, directly in front. That is by far the best way to shoot if you are just getting started. And then there's a key light and a fill light. All that means is you have 1 light on one side, 1 light angled on the other, and they both come in to illuminate your face nicely. And lighting can make a huge, huge difference. I can tell you, even if you think that your room is well lit, when you put a supplemental light in there, it makes a world of difference, and it doesn't need to be terribly expensive. So here's a couple options for you right here. There are 2 small LED panels you can pick up for 30 bucks each. So for 60 bucks, you could have a great 2-point lighting setup, or for 30 or 40 bucks, you could grab a ring light. It's not gonna give you the 2-point lighting, so it's not gonna be as much depth or shadow or as much, maybe as dramatic, but a nice ring light for 25, 35 bucks can illuminate you dead on, and it will make things look dramatically better. And here's an example of that right here. So here are 2 videos that I shot with different lighting, and you can clearly see on one side of the screen, things look kind of orangey, they look dark. It just doesn't look as professional and enticing. Where on the other side of the screen, you can see everything is super well lit. It just looks more engaging, it looks more enticing. It's much more likely that you'll click on it, and that is what it's all about. So lighting does make a huge, huge difference in the overall product. But if there's one thing you need to focus on with video to get started, I'd encourage you to focus on the sound and the audio sources first. So Google tips. Let's start getting into these platforms. Now that we know video, let's start diving into these major platforms and some action steps that you can take to make sure you're getting the most out of your marketing. So Google tips, we're gonna talk about creating a compelling headline image sizing and updating your content. So let's dive right in. Creating a compelling headline. How do you do it? Everything doesn't need to be like BuzzFeed, clickbaity style, but you want to make it enticing enough for people to click through. If you have a title that says, sometimes chiropractic care is all right when you do this really long technique that nobody understands the word, that's not very compelling, right? So utilize a headline to ask questions. What your surgeon has not told you. Solve problems. The 3 benefits that chiropractic care can give for CrossFit athletes, or include keywords. Those both examples had each of those, right? So ask questions, solve problems, and include keywords. Use this as a framework. You don't have to have all 3, but utilize at least one of these in your headlines to make them more engaging and make it more likely that somebody will click through, interact, engage with, and or share your content. Headlines are key. They don't need to be weird, but make sure that you're utilizing some form of a process. And my recommendation is ask a question, solve a problem, and definitely make sure to include some keywords. Image sizing. This is something almost nobody talks about. It might not be first what you think. When we talk about Google, if I didn't say this to begin with, we're talking about search engine optimization, right? How are people finding you online? That's why those headlines are so important. But image sizing is also important. Google ranks your website depending upon how quickly it loads. Now, Google, behind their veil of secrecy, never says the exact formula or algorithm, because then everybody would be able to play it out, right? But it's been identified that image sizing or page speed, how quickly does your website load when somebody clicks? And we're talking down to tenths and 1/100ths of a second make a huge difference. That page speed or load speed can make a dramatic difference in whether you show up on the first page or the first few results, or whether you are hanging out on the 3rd and 4th page, AKA nobody's finding you. So how do you make your page load quickly? One of the best ways to do that is to reduce the size of your images. Images that are large take up a lot of cache. They take up a lot of space. They take up a lot of time when loading. So Squash is a great program that I've utilized that minimizes that image size. Something that cuts it by 90%, but you can't tell a difference. It doesn't become pixelated or look like a Nintendo game or an Atari game. It looks clean and clear, but it takes out a lot of the file size, which helps your page load. If you have a lot of pictures on your website, I'm not talking a lot, could even just be 5 or 10, can make a dramatic difference in the page speed that you have. So image sizing is super important. If you have a leased or a rented website by some of these website providers, ask them, hey, what does the page speed look like? Where are we at? Are my images squashed? That's a very important question. And clearly, if you're doing it yourself, you need to have this on your radar. Number 3 with Google and search engine optimization is updating your content. Nobody wants to go to a website and it looks like there's cobwebs. Has this guy been here since 1996? I don't know, there's some weird graphic. It looks like he built it himself when he was in college. You don't want that, right? So update your content. Keep things fresh. Google likes the new stuff as you publish content. And this also goes, you can edit old content. If you have classic hits, right? Favorites, popular content that people have visited, don't hesitate to go back every year or 2 and update it. Get a new date on it. Update the content. New for 2019, new for 2018, whatever the case may be. Updating old content is just as good as putting new content up, but make sure that your website's fresh. And just think about it from a consumer perspective. If a patient, a prospect, your audience, they go to Google, you wrote a great headline, they click through, and it looks like you haven't been there in 3 years, they're gonna question, is this guy or gal open or not anymore? I don't know, it just gives a really off-putting perception. So keep your content fresh is not only good from a user experience perspective, in other words, are patients and people gonna be excited to call your office? Are you gonna reduce any confusion and friction to make sure they take action? But also Google will help pump your stuff up. As you put out more content, it shows them that you are engaged with your website, that you're engaged with your product, that you're engaged with your audience, and that you're gonna be actively trying to draw people there. And they will give you favor for it by boosting you up those rankings. Next platform we're gonna talk about is Facebook, the behemoth, right? 2 billion active users. What are some keys? There are 3 key things to keep in mind. Post daily, mix in original curated content, and use video. Let's go one by one. Posting daily gives you the ability to build momentum and keep your audience engaged. That is so important. When you don't post on Facebook for a stretch of time, it is a struggle to get momentum back, not only from a I'm gonna take the time to do it perspective, but also from a Facebook reach perspective. How many people are seeing your post, right? If you're staying consistent, you will see your numbers grow. And that is so important. So post daily. Now you might be thinking, gosh, daily, that seems so hard. How am I gonna think of something every single day to post? This is where mixing in curated content and original content comes into play. All curated content means is sharing other people's stuff. So let them do the heavy lifting. Whether you want to share something from the Smart Chiropractor, perhaps you want to share something from the Evidence Based Chiropractor. Mix in other content. Hit that share button. Take the load off of you and your staff to have to produce 24/7 all the time. There's a ton of great content out there, so keep your eyes peeled for it. When you see something cool, when you see something interesting, post it. And the other thing to keep in mind is there are plenty of programs, Meet Edgar, other things like that, Hootsuite, that allow you to set up posts and put them in the queue, so to speak, where you could hit, I want to share this, and then it goes out next week or 4 days from now. It doesn't all have to be live. There are plenty of programs that enable you to schedule out those posts as well. So mix in curated and original content, helps lighten the load on you and your staff. It also makes it more interesting from an audience perspective and the people going to your page. Oh, cool, I see that he shared this. I see that he's posted that. It shows that you're more well connected than just yelling at them 24/7. And finally, use video. There's nothing that Facebook favors more than video, so utilize it. We went through those 5 commandments earlier. So basically identify those pain points, create a nice headline, make sure your sound and lighting are set up. These are easy things to do once you know how, as you already do know now, but make sure that you're utilizing video to get out there and to maximize your engagement. When you put up video, it reaches more people on Facebook than other content when you compare apples to apples. And it is a game of reach, right? It's a game of audience building. It's a game of getting people to see your message before they can resonate with it. Using video is the best way by far to do that. Instagram tips. If you are not on Instagram, you should be, because it is growing like crazy, and it's a great way to connect with people that are otherwise hard to reach. So we're going to talk about direct messaging, we're going to talk about tagging other businesses, and we're going to talk about showing your journey as a way to grow your Instagram channel. Where do we start? Well, sliding into their DMs, sliding into direct messaging is a great way to connect with other people in your community. Perhaps it's a restaurant owner, perhaps it's a CrossFit superstar at the local gym, maybe it's a minor league baseball player. It could be anybody of influence that has a following in your community. You can search by location, see the people who live around you, click on some profiles, see how many followers they have. If they are in the health and fitness industry and they have a lot of followers, reach out to them via direct message. I can tell you direct messages are going to get more replies than anything else. I have a personal example I've utilized. I haven't thought about this in months, but I have a personal example where I had reached out to Katie Couric, of all people, on direct messaging, and she wrote back to me. I can tell you, I probably could have emailed her 100 times in a row. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I wouldn't have got an email back. But in direct messaging, when somebody has their phone on them 24/7, they're constantly checking it, it's personal, it's still relatively unfiltered, it gives you the opportunity. You don't have to message somebody like Katie Couric, you can if you want, but I'd encourage you to message a micro-influencer in your community. What does that mean? Well, somebody that might have 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 followers. There's gonna be a lot of those people in your community in the health and fitness industry. Healthy foods, healthy restaurants, again, gym owners. Those are great people to reach out to. And start the conversation about a collaborative type thing, right? You could maybe visit them, as we'll talk about right now, visit them in their business and tag them. Tag the other businesses as you eat your lunch day in and day out, as you go to get a massage and take your self-care days. Make sure that you are taking pictures and tagging those other businesses. Now, why is that important? Well, when you do that, they will see that you tagged them. And guess what they're gonna do? They're gonna share that with their audience, which means your audience is going to grow. So keep that in mind. Tag other businesses, Showcase the people, the places, the things that you love in your community and that you love to experience your life with. And when you do that, those individuals, those businesses, those people will share with their audience. And over time, you will be able to get more people paying attention and following you. So share the love. And finally, show the journey. Show behind the scenes. Instagram is a great place to show behind the scenes, whether you're meeting with celebrities, whether you are meeting with local surgeons and other healthcare providers, or you're meeting with other chiropractors. Take a picture, do a story, do something to showcase who you are, what you're about, because all of these little things are like drops in a bucket. As people better understand your message of health, as they see you active and engaged in the community, this all builds your brand, it builds your audience, it builds that know, trust, and like factor that is so important as you build and grow your practices. So show the journey and be yourself every step of the way. And as we dive into YouTube tips, what are we looking at here? Everybody knows YouTube, right? We talked about it earlier. YouTube is actually a bigger search engine than Google at this point in time, believe it or not. People are spending a ton of time on YouTube. So what are some 3 take-home messages? Longer is better, have compelling thumbnails, and link to your other content. Let's dive in. On YouTube, longer is better. When people are on Facebook, sometimes, and you probably know, right? You're scrolling through your feed. If you see a video that's 20 minutes long, you're probably not gonna watch it, right? Nobody goes to Facebook to watch video, but people are accustomed by the nature of YouTube that they're there to watch video. So use that to your advantage. And as you can see here, this is the optimal length of a video. And there's a little blip right about 4 minutes, which by the way is a great time, a good blip, meaning that that is where some things go up before the audience starts to trail off. 4 minutes is a great time to talk about a subject as a doc. So 3 to 4 minutes, don't overly stress out about longer is better. But when you have nice long form pieces, it draws people in, and guess what? YouTube likes to have people drawn into their platform as they all do, and they will start showing your videos to more and more people, and you'll build an audience there. So don't hesitate to put some longer videos on YouTube as opposed to Facebook. Compelling thumbnails, be interesting, but don't be sleazy. You can see on one side, we have a big power word, ironically, of weak, right? We see the muscles in red. This is interesting. This got over 1 million views. It is interesting. It's not sleazy, right? It tells the story. It gets me interested. I want to know what's going on. It looks like somebody's working out. If I'm working out and I'm concerned about weak muscles, this is probably something I'm going to click on. On the other side of the screen, we see a plethora of this kind of thing going on where it's an Instagram model getting adjusted. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It might get you some views, but I'm going to say a lot of those views are going to come at the diminishment of your brand. There are a couple docs who have massive followings on YouTube that do this sort of thing very successfully. They've monetized it, but it is not realistic. There are also quite a few people that play in the NBA, but not everybody plays basketball gets there, right? So there are the anomalies. You want to think of yourself not as that exception to the rule in this case. And I'd encourage you, be interesting with your thumbnails, but don't get sleazy, don't get weird. Understand, what do you want people to resonate with when they click on a video for your practice? Make it interesting, certainly, have a great headline, but don't go the other direction and compete at that bottom rung. I don't think it's gonna serve you long term, and once things are on the internet, they stay there forever, so always keep that in mind. The other great thing about YouTube is in the description of the video, link to your other content. YouTube, as we said, it is a huge search engine. People are going there looking for answers. And in the video, in your description, if you post, check out the full blog at www.theevidencebasedchiropractor.com/blog. You start driving people off of YouTube to your web property, to your website, wherever you want them to go. And this is how you build a really robust content strategy where you have perhaps email sending somebody here, and you have Facebook here and maybe linking to this other place. And this starts to create a very, very nice ecosystem where you get people working around all of your different platforms, engaging on the platforms that they prefer, right? And you're not driving them only to one place. I'm only here, and if you're not here, I'm not anywhere else, is not a good way to think about your social channels. The more places you can be, different people, just as you, like different platforms better than others. So be present on as many as possible so it makes it easy for people to share. And don't hesitate to use YouTube as a great place to push people to some of the other channels where you know they may connect with you. As we dive into LinkedIn, many docs I know don't touch LinkedIn as often or as much as they should. I think that's probably because of all the spammy social media manager lead generation messages that you get, but I'd encourage you to think about LinkedIn in a different capacity. It is the B2B platform that is out there, right? It is the business-to-business platform, and there are 3 great things you can do on LinkedIn. Connect with other docs, use groups, which is huge, and don't be afraid to get technical, which is also awesome from a chiropractor's point of view. So connect with other docs. How can you do that? Quite simply, log into your profile, click on that icon, the second one from the left that says My Network, scroll down a little bit and look for people that you want to connect with, right? It is going to pre-populate people based upon the individuals that you're already connected with, right? So if you want to connect with other chiropractors, do it. If you want to connect with other people in your community, do it. They will suggest people right there. You can click connect and get started really, really easily. LinkedIn, it makes it easy to connect with other people, but just instead of doing one at a time, click on My Network and it's going to draw down some best people that they see for you. Chances are they do a good job doing that. Next is use groups. A lot of people talk about Facebook groups, right? But LinkedIn groups are a huge opportunity. I think that they are a huge hack in the social world, meaning they are overlooked yet have huge, huge range. You can see right here, there's a chiropractic professionals group that has over 20,000 people in it, and it is not nearly as crowded with posts as many Facebook groups. So your stuff will be seen. Now you might not want to be in with other chiropractors. Perhaps you want to be in a local group dedicated to healthy living, right? Perhaps you want to be in a local fitness group, a local movement group, a local healthcare provider group. That is a-okay. Check out those groups on LinkedIn, because if you start becoming engaged in them, you can make a name for yourself really, really quickly. So I think LinkedIn groups are a huge opportunity to get your message out there and connect with people on social media that's overlooked many times. And finally, don't be afraid to get technical. LinkedIn is that business-to-business platform, right? So there is a certain level of prestige, there's a certain level of knowledge that is inherent with LinkedIn. Some of the other social platforms don't exactly embrace. So LinkedIn is a great place to get technical. If you want to dive deep into how the shoulder moves, if you want to dive deep into pelvic tilt, one of the best places to do that is on LinkedIn. You can post videos there from your YouTube channel. You can have the text right there as copy, but don't be afraid to get technical. There are other professionals there, other people going to be looking at it, and LinkedIn is a great place to go deep. So don't hesitate to do so. And as we round things out, let's talk about one of my personal favorites, podcasting. We're going to talk about finding a format, going deep, and doing collabs. Podcasting is a huge opportunity to build and grow your practice. As we talked about at the beginning, not as many people listen to podcasts as are on YouTube, but the individuals that are there are going to be super engaged with you and your message, which is really, really awesome. So how do you start? Well, find a format. It doesn't matter. Your format might be 3 minutes, it might be 3 hours. On the screen, I have a couple examples. We have Pat Flynn, very, very popular podcast. 30 minutes or less, 15 minutes, some episodes. They're not long form. Tim Ferriss Show, another hugely successful podcast. He does 2 hour, 3 hour sit down interviews. These are dramatically different formats. Both work, right? It's not one works and one doesn't, both work. But get a feel. What does your time look like? Are you gonna interview? Are you gonna do it yourself? And it might take a little time to iterate and get there. Don't be afraid of that. But understanding that you are looking for a format is very important, because once people know who you are and what you're about, they can count on it, which is great for retention of listeners over time. If everything's different, it always comes out on a different day, it's always a different time, it's always a different format, it's difficult to pay attention to. People like consistency, so find that format regardless of what it is, based upon what works for you. Go deep. don't hesitate to explore those topics. Even if you are a short form podcast and it's 5-minute, 15-minute episodes, don't hesitate to break up into part 1, part 2, part 3 if it's something you want to go deep with. But don't hesitate, similar to LinkedIn, don't hesitate to go deep with the knowledge base. You probably, if you listen to podcasts, you might listen to some of the ones I illustrated earlier, or maybe a true crime pod. It's like people put it on and like you're gonna work out for an hour, you're gonna be in the car for a half hour. People are ready to go deep. It doesn't mean that your content needs to be super long or every podcast needs to be multiple hours, but what it does mean is you have the opportunity through your voice in that medium. Typically that's happening when people are doing something else. They're working out, they're driving, they can't watch video. Maybe they're at work and they have an earbud in. So don't hesitate to go deep with the topics and explore things through audio. And finally, do collaborations. This is an example of a video I did that we pulled the audio from to use in a podcast that I did with an orthopedic surgeon just a week or 2 ago. So do collaborations, similar to as we talked about with direct messaging on Instagram and things like that. Have people on, interview other individuals, because guess what? They're gonna showcase that to their audience. They're gonna showcase the podcast they did with you, right? I was so happy to go on Dr. Jeff's podcast. Now you start to get listenership from their audience, which is a great place to be. And that's how you can grow and scale a lot faster. So do collaborations, find other people that are interesting, other influencers in your community, people you want to connect with. Maybe you even direct message them on Instagram to make the connection and then propose the podcast from there. You can go full circle with it. So then the question becomes, that is a massive amount of information, Jeff, and I would love to get started, but does this work? I'll show you a few examples that I pulled down literally just today from the Evidence Based Chiropractor. And my answer to you is going to be yes. This is behind the scenes at the Evidence Based Chiropractor on Facebook. We have, over the course of less than a month, 70,000 people reached, 15,000 post engagements, 40,000 minutes of video watched. These are really, really big numbers. Now, I want to also say there are plenty of people out there whose numbers dwarf what I have done. They have done 10 times, 20 times, 50 times more than that. That's a-okay. We all start at 0, but the most important thing is when you think about this, if you are not doing this, think about what these numbers would look like. If I wasn't doing this, this would all be 0. That would be 60,000, 69,000 less people reached. That would be 47,000 minutes of video not watched. 15,000 likes, shares, or comments that didn't happen if I didn't take action. So everyone starts out at 0, everyone starts out small, but understand this is where you can get to with a little bit of persistence over time. And this is behind the scenes on the YouTube channel. YouTube channel was actually something that I completely ignored for way too long. And you can see here, just over the course of the last 30 days or so, we have 16,000 minutes of video watched, 6,000 views, and people watching it for a few minutes at a time. 16,000 minutes is an untold number of hours continuously of video watched. And up until last year, all of that opportunity was lost on me. And if so, I would encourage you, if you are not putting things up on YouTube, if you are not getting out there on Facebook, if you're not using LinkedIn, if you're not using Instagram, think of all the connections, all the opportunity to get out there to people by the hundreds, by the thousands, by the tens of thousands, perhaps by the hundreds of thousands and millions eventually, that you miss out on if you don't take action. So this year, here are some stats. This was actually from 2018. YouTube, we had over 21 straight days, 500 hours watched. Facebook, 1,200 hours watched there. Reach of over 20,000 individuals per week, and website over 15,000. So these are all touch points where if you take away any of these platforms, you just start missing out on massive opportunities to touch and engage with people in your audience. And as a chiropractor practicing in a community, you know how important it is to be front and center with people, to be top of mind, and to ultimately be the person that they look to trust when they're ready to pick up the phone, call, and make an appointment. So as you can see here, the most important thing is to take action. That's what I would encourage you to do. All the information today, there was a lot of it there. You might not implement every single piece of it tomorrow, but take one aspect, take one platform that you've neglected or you've looked to dive into but haven't started yet. Take one action step today. Make that journey of 1,000 miles start with one step. Take that first step today. Start getting those results and email me, jeff@theevidencebasedchiropractor.com, and let me know about the first step that you took in your journey. I'm happy to engage with the post, give you a comment, give you a like, give you a share, and make sure I can do everything possible to help you get your message out to the people in your community. And without further ado, let's do this.